Okay, so I made a video a while back on advertisements in London Underground. Basically, these are advertisements showing young women in yellow bikinis on a beach. I forget what the marketing company is, but basically the statement is, "Are you beach body ready?" The details aren't very important. This is easily found online. I just want to talk rather about the wider issues behind this. Anyway, development on this story. Sadiq Khan, the new mayor of London, has decided to ban this on the grounds that he sees it as a bad image for young women, and he has two daughters of his own and so on. I'm not overly surprised by that. Sadiq Khan is a left-wing figure. He's self-proclaimed feminist, so that's pretty much feminist thinking. I have looked at both sides. I have considered both arguments, and I think it's misguided. I'm not personally bothered by the ads being banned. It doesn't. I don't live in London. It doesn't personally impact me. But I do think it sets a precedence whereby anything that could be construed as remotely provocative or offensive in any way is going to be banned. And if you really take this to its full extent, then you're going to have to ban all men's magazines because they show guys with six packs. You're going to have to ban all hair products. You're going to have to ban all pharmaceutical products because they all use some sort of human aesthetics in their advertising. So at what point do you draw the line? Um, I've looked at the posters, and I have to say, this is really not a case where you're seeing super thin, anorexic looking models. Now, if that was the case, I would totally back the mayor's decision because I think that would genuinely be promoting an unhealthy body image. Um, there has been problems with young people, particularly young women, but some young men too, suffering from issues like body dysmorphia, excuse me, bulimia, and so on. I'm not insensitive to those problems. They're terrible, life-changing conditions, and I'm not at all insensitive to those issues. But you do have to have a reasonable sort of line where this is drawn. Otherwise, you get anything that could potentially be banned. And like I say, these adverts are not super thin models. They are toned. They're slim. They're not, from what I could see, they're really not super thin. It's not like you can see the bones protruding from the bodies, as you can see from some supermodels. And I do, by the way, support tougher legislation on modeling agencies because some of them are guilty of, for example, telling models they can only eat let sleep a day and so on. I think that's ridiculous. And that genuinely is promoting serious health problems. There's been examples of, I don't know if she was a Brazilian or a Venezuelan model, but she basically died from starvation. And there have been numerous high profile cases around that. So I'm in no way ignorant or insensitive to those issues. I just think that this doesn't quite fall into that category. These women are toned, they're not super thin. But there is also double standards because the same sort of left wing thinking, I'm not talking about Sadiq Khan personally, but the same sort of left wing thinking that says, oh, we should ban this because it gives women an unrealistic body image, would have absolutely no problem with the whole big is beautiful concept. Um, because that's to show tolerance to overweight people and not make them feel excluded and all the rest of it. Yet, surely that is being equally irresponsible. Like when you have clearly overweight models, and I'm not just talking about slightly on the big side, I'm talking about blatantly overweight and morbidly obese in some cases, saying that it's beautiful when it's not. Leaving aside the aesthetics, and I think most people honestly would not accept that that is aesthetically appealing, there's a health factor. It's simply not healthy to promote the idea that being morbidly obese is a good thing when it can cause all sorts of problems with, obviously, with diabetes, with heart failure, with all sorts of things. In fact, in a country like the UK, heart failure has now surpassed cancer as the number one cause of death. Heart disease, I should say. So, if you're going to ban something like this, then you're going to have to go across the board and say, wait a second, big is beautiful. Marketing is also irresponsible. You know, to me, this comes down to live and let live. The adverts are slightly provocative. They're saying, are you beach body ready? But They're not actually forcing any women to buy their products. If you're a woman and it annoys you, simple, don't buy the product. And it's not as if the adverts are absolutely everywhere. I was in London last year. I saw one or two of them. I went around at least 100 different stations. So, I was going around the system. It's not as if they're plastered in every single station and they're really, really overdoing it. There's a few of them around, but they're not. Um, I just think people should be more tolerant and not be so sensitive on these things. Um, as I say, I really emphasize I'm sympathetic to people who have suffered bulimia and so on, but I still say you cannot change, you know, then it becomes an issue. Well, anyone who's ever had issues, I mean, are you going to ban, for example, advertisements for horror films? Because so as not to upset people who suffer from anxiety? Are you going to ban? Are we going to become a society where we really are wrapped in cotton wool, and every single little thing that could potentially offend or provoke people is going to be banned? That's ultimately what it comes down to. And there's many things that irritate me on a daily basis. I mean, the constant feminist messages in newspapers on an absolute daily basis wind me up. But I can't say, oh, let's ban it. Um, what I call for is a more balanced coverage to also cover men's issues, and they're not always, you know, I get tired of feminists constantly playing the victimhood agenda. But that's all I want to say. Let me know your thoughts on this. Do you think the mayor was right to ban these posters, or do you think it's left wing or feminist overreach? I fall into the latter camp. I think it's overreach. I don't think there is enough of a justification to ban these. There is no direct examples of any young women um, saying that these ads have led them to bulimia or anything of the sort. So, it's just overreach, and I think it's a pity. When Boris Johnson was mayor, he stopped short of banning it, and I think that was the right thing. So, when Sadiq Khan's mayoralty, are we going to see a lot of these sort of left-wing approaches of just banning things because some people might be sensitive about them? Are we going to see all sorts of so-called progressive moves, which actually, when you look a little bit deeper, are not that progressive because partly they're based on double standards? I mean, you can't ban this and then say, oh, big is beautiful is progressive because it's not. It's not. Let me know your thoughts.